Welcome to the Tabletop Gaming Guild podcast, a podcast all about the experiences and memories that board games with friends and family can create. This evening, we're going to discuss the hot button topic of complexity in games. But first, let's check in to see what we've been up to.
Well, I guess I'll go first. So one of the games I played that I really liked a lot was from Ion Games. We played with the designer, and that was Dekrakar, or the 5 President Week, which is a game that simulates Argentinians' presidential elections, where within a week they went through 5 different presidents. It was a pretty cool simulation game that I think I think it did pretty well in giving the feel of like a crazy sort of like turbulent time.
Yeah, the political turmoil.
Yeah, a lot of political turmoil, a lot of corruption and different things you could do. Game itself, I think, would play best at the super high play count of 6, which is the max play count, and everyone knowing how to play the game already. So I think it's a multiple playthrough game, and it's going to be a very cutthroat game and a very mean game. And throughout the game, all you have to do to win is you either have to have 10 points or you have to be the president and balance the budget, but pay off the foreign debt. So I thought it was a really cool game. It's just ended on Kickstarter. I'm not sure if they do late pledges or not on that one, but it's a small box game and it was just fun. Nathan, what did you think of it?
It was quite good, especially if you're interested in the history and the politics. I wouldn't say it was most of the Ion games. I wouldn't say it's games for like newcomers to the hobby. This one's a little bit on the lighter end as far as Ion goes, but it's still drier, thinkier game, even though it can get a little wild at times too. So, but as far as availability, typically, Ion Games has all of their, after their Kickstarters, all their games are available on their website to purchase.
Yeah, and you're right. This is actually one of the lower complexity games they have. Their games can be very, very complicated.
Oh, yeah. In fact, they have a whole series of games that, go with like prehistoric and Neolithic periods, and they like link. So you got these massive, super complicated games that once you finish one game, you could play the next one in the series, and you're in the next time period.
It's almost fitting that you're talking about this today for this episode.
Yeah, pretty much. So now that we have an example of a game that I played that is not super complex, but it's up there, I'm going to play a game that's not very complex, but was fun. This is actually a prototype game that I got to play, which was called Obscure War, which is actually a tabletop miniature board game. It's more into miniatures than I thought it was when I played it. The prototype comes with werewolves and vampire cabals, but you're going to be able to get other ones in there, and you're going to be able to like specialize your team. You get only 4 characters. You can have a master, an elite, something else, and something else. There's just 4 different ranks, and that's all you can have. And you're going to play through only 3 rounds of the game. And the person with the most points at the end of the game wins. But the way that you're going to do this is these 4 different ranks that each player has, they're going to fire off in order. So the master will go first for the first player, and then the master will go first for the second player. And then they'll go in order. So you will have 4 turns per round. And the next round, it changes over to the other player, and they go first. And the way that you score points in the game is you simply, if you do damage to the opponent, doesn't matter how much, you get 1 point. If you control one of these little areas, there's like 5 different squares in the game, you'll get a point if you control that. And that's it. I mean, that's all the points that are in the game. And it goes pretty quick, and I think it's going to be really cool once they add more miniatures into the game. So I think this is going to be like a super heavy miniatures game where you're just going to have a lot of different units that you can mix and match and play throughout the game. I thought it was interesting. Yeah, and the miniatures for it, these prototype miniatures are amazing. I look forward to showing you guys those. Evan, do you have anything that you've been recently doing?
So, game-wise that I've been playing, I got another playthrough with Psycho Killer, but I got it to play with multiple players instead of 2. And the game runs really well. I enjoyed that. I talked about it the last time we did a recording, so I'm not going to talk too much about it because I still have to finish my review for it. But yeah, it plays really well with higher play count. Got a quick game of a good classic of Sushi Go over the weekend. If you never played it, it's a fantastic 20-minute game. It's super easy to learn, and it's a lot of fun. Beyond that, that's really all I've played. I'm continuing my zombie horde painting, and I've actually been painting a little bit of Wild West terrain, which more details about that's going to be popping up on the channel here soon. I don't want to spill too much about it yet, so...
Yeah, I'm super excited about that too. I'll throw out another one I did because I forgot about it, and I thought these two were pretty important. King Domino Origins, I got to play that one, and I think that is the best King Domino, period. So King Domino is a very, very light game. King Domino Origins is still very light, but has 3 different game modes. So when you play it, you can go all the way from like super easy like King Domino to slightly more complex, which is Queen Domino. It's not like horrifically more complicated, but it does have some extra like gamer style elements to it. And this is sort of like an all-in-one package game. If you don't have King Domino and you're interested in that game, this is the version I think you should get over any other ones. And the last one was Terraforming Mars Ares, which is not Terraforming Mars.
So I also got a play of this in. What are your thoughts on this one?
So coming from a background of liking Race for the Galaxy, I love Eminent Domain. I already knew that it was sort of in that same vein, sort of as it is. And it still gives the idea of Terraforming Mars along with that role selection thing that you find in Eminent Domain and a Race for the Galaxy, where you pick a role. In Terraforming Mars Ares, everyone picks them simultaneously and you flip. Once they're all flipped, those are the only actions you can do on that turn. So there's like 5 actions you can do. If people don't pick some of those actions, you can't do them. But when you select an action and you flip it, you get a slight bonus down on the bottom, but everyone else gets to do that action too, but not the bonus if they didn't select that action.
Oh, not to interrupt on that, but so this one's not actually like part of the big board game. This is like a card game separate, right?
Yeah, this thing is not compatible with Terraforming Mars in any way. A lot of people get confused by it because you know, you have tons of Terraforming Mars expansions, and they're just Terraforming Mars like Prelude, Terraforming Mars Colonies, Terraforming Mars Turmoil, and then there's Terraforming Mars Ares, and there's really nothing immediately on the box to tell you it's not compatible until you look very closely. But one of the benefits on it is that, I don't know if Evan's played Terraforming Mars, but when you play Terraforming Mars and you have those cards, it actually looks like clip art that they used, or like open source art for all the cards, like art you use for like a business presentation or on these cards.
Yeah, I've played Terraforming Mars a few times.
Yeah, so the art's awful, but Terraforming Mars Ares art is good. It is the art that should have been in Terraforming Mars. Did you play the physical version, Dan?
We tried this out on TTS, just okay. I think a single play of it, I think, is what we've got underneath our belts. You know, people have said like it's the cross between Terraforming Mars and Race for the Galaxy. I can see where people are coming from, but like really the only thing it borrows from Race for the Galaxy is the role selection mechanic, more or less. And like the only thing it borrows from Terraforming Mars is the resource system, basically, and like the end game conditions, I guess.
The end game conditions actually are slightly different, but they're the same name. I think the oxygen and the temperature track are longer in Terraforming Mars Ares. The oceans are exactly the same. There's still 9 oceans. So what did you think? Did you like it, Dan?
I liked it. I thought it was a good, solid game. But after a single play, me and my brother basically looked at each other and said, yeah, this is a good game, but we're probably not going to play it as long as Terraforming Mars is in the collection, was basically where we stood with it.
Yeah, Terraforming Mars is a much better game on multiple levels. Ares is his own animal, and I don't think they compare. Terraforming Mars is better. And that, I don't even get that. They call Terraforming Mars Ares the card game. It's no more of the card game than the board game is.
Was their approach to it kind of like with Jaws of the Lion for Gloomhaven, almost to like segue your way into the bigger game?
I have no idea what they were thinking.
I did not hear that this was one of the intentions of coming out with this alternate version of it.
I think it was mainly they were looking at streamlining it, make it more approachable for more people. In fact, this was a game that was really, really heavily hyped, and a lot of people were saying this is just like going to replace Terraforming Mars, which no, it's not, in my opinion. And, you know, I've only played this a few times, and this is one of the few games I really got into the hype. I really usually try to avoid getting too heavily into the hype, and I think it hurt the game, and at least in my plays, it's like my expectations were so high, it could not possibly meet them.
I agree with it. I think they really did try to make it like Terraforming Mars Revised.
Yeah, Dan hasn't got to talk about what games he's played yet.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, Dan, what games have you played? Terraforming Mars?
That was not in the past week, no, sadly, tragically. The only thing that I have managed to get to the table was more Dune Imperium, more Dune Imperium, which is totally not a bad thing at all, for sure. I tried different strategy just to try it and got my Tugus thoroughly handed to me. So, good learning experience.
I love Dune Imperium. We did play a game of that, too. Dune Imperium's so good.
Yeah, it's a great game. I mean, if you want to learn a little bit about it, it's on our YouTube channel, so you can always watch that.
I think at least twice. I think there's at least 2 playthroughs on there.
I think so.
The expansion is like right around the corner of being released too, isn't it?
I believe it got delayed. So Nathan, what have you played?
I got to play a demo of another Ion game called Samu Ramat. I hope I pronounced that right. Now, if you don't know, Samu Ramat was a queen in the Assyrian Empire in 9th century BC. So this is historically set. It is... Being a historical themed game, it is kind of intimidating when you just look at it. It seems like it would be a dry game. It is not. This is actually a pretty interesting game with some unique mechanics. The main core concept of this is, you're trying to, protect your kingdom, expand your influence, and, increase trade and medicine and military power, as well as religion. And this is a cooperative game where you can either use your leader or one of the other available generic leaders, not generic, but, for other provinces that are just controlled by everybody. But also, as you build your influence around the region, you can unlock new leaders as you gain control of a region that have their own unique powers. And one of the cool elements of this is it has a scenario system. So each time you play, you're going to have a different, slightly different objective. And I believe, we didn't get to see this in the demo, but I believe they said that you can link them in the campaign. So, any cooperative game that's not like blisteringly hard, I really enjoy. This is one that you feel like you have a chance of winning. Things may turn quickly against you and you may end up losing pretty quickly, but you always feel like if you play it well, you do have a chance.
Yeah, I played this with Nathan and the people at Ion Games, and I'm going to have to echo his sentiment. This is a very solid, well thought out co-op game with a lot of cool things hanging on its branches, shiny things. And I was generally impressed by the apparent replay depth to the game. So there's these scenario cards that you could play as one-offs, and there's like 10 or 12 of them, in addition to a 5-part campaign style play, and it seems like it's got a lot of stuff going for it. That's where I'm at.
One other element I did really like is they have cards you can play that, a lot of them have a specific, place you have to be or resource you have to use to trigger them. It's like where they're really powerful if you trigger them in this one region, but they're not completely useless if you can't get to that region. You can always use them for the lesser abilities. So that's one of the things that I find that a lot of games get wrong. It's like you get this card that you need a specific scenario to use it, and it's useless otherwise, and you're just clogging up your hand. But this one, at least you have, it may not be as powerful, but you can still use this card. So that's what I've been playing. Should we get into complexity in gaming?
Yeah, I think so.
This may be a complex topic.
Stop.
Well, we probably should start off by talking about complexity, as it is a very subjective concept. It's the idea of weight or difficulty is definitely going to vary from player to player. And it's usually broken down into light, midweight, and heavy games. Light being kind of light also being referred to as gateway games or welcoming games, games that are good for newcomers to the hobby, or if you want just something quick and easy. A good example that would be, Dominion or Carcassonne, games like that.
Yeah, this might be almost one that we each get a turn on the soapbox here to talk about what we think here, because I feel most of us are going to ramble for a little bit.
All right, let me dig into this. I got a fiddle to play, so let me play my fiddle. So when I think about complexity in games, I generally think of games as having effectively 2 different kinds of complexity. One is the rules complexity. How complex is the rule set itself? Because the more complex the rules are, the harder it is to learn, almost. But there are games out there that have extremely simple, almost bare bones rule sets, but are very complex in their play states. Probably the best example of this extreme would probably be abstract games, where you have some pieces, each piece, moves a certain way, just kind of like chess, but like the play states that can result from that relatively simple rule state is staggering.
Now I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into that. And for myself, which I don't know if many people would agree with it, but for myself, complexity is just basically the rule set, where I think that an abstract game can have a ton of strategy and be complex in what you have to think through. If it's easy to teach, it's a lower complexity score for myself. And that's just how I do it. But
I would agree with that.
I'll go off of James's thought, because when I think of complex games, some of the more complex games I know go into the wargaming, like board game arena, and the ability to teach it, I feel, should lower the complexity level. And one fantastic example of that is if you look at like the original Advanced Squad Leader, which is a very, very complex game, but a lot of the older Avalon Hill games, they did a phenomenal way of teaching you how to play the game. And it was, you're going to start, and the rules are these 3 pages, and we're going to teach you these 5 concepts. Once you got that and you run through the scenario, we go into the next one where we're going to take those and we're going to add a couple more rules. And we're going to do that 8 or 9 times. And you can just get off that train at any point once you get to a comfort level. So sometimes I feel that the complexity level that some of those games get is almost undeserved, because you don't have to play at the highest complexity level out there. And how they build up to it makes it more approachable.
Interesting. So if I'm not mistaken, all 3 of you gentlemen, play complexity does not matter to you.
I almost go, for me, play complexity is more in like the strategy level, so I separate them.
Yeah, strategic depth does not equal complexity for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably not the same for everyone, but for myself, I separate the two between like how complex is the game to relay to another person to get them to play it, and then how much strategic depth is in the game. So I can maybe easily teach them how to play this game because there's not a whole ton of rules, but they might be playing it for a very long time because there's a lot of strategic depth, sort of thing. I think abstracts fall in that a lot, like you were saying. Super easy to teach. I can teach anyone chess, but has a lot of strategic depth to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, strategic complexity is, I do really appreciate it, and a simple game, I think for me to enjoy it needs that strategic complexity. But it's the idea that as long as it's easy to learn, I still consider it a simple game. Just because I like the idea. To me, it's more important just be able to get the game to the table quickly, and that's what I really kind of weight my games on.
I don't approach the complexity like really as a driving force on whether I want to or how much I will enjoy the game, because one of my favorite games that I'll play is King of Tokyo, and it's Yahtzee with a theme. It's simple, but it's so much fun.
Yeah, that's another discussion topic too. Complexity by itself is not much. It's how much complexity is in a game and it's still enjoyable. Like, you can teach King of Tokyo in 5 minutes flat and everyone's having fun, but down to Twilight Imperium, I need like an hour to teach people.
I think the simple, straightforward games get undervalued in the hobby in many ways. It's very easy for some gamers to think, okay, I like heavy games, so it's like I'm just gonna ignore these light things. If you're not a real gamer if you play the light games, and that's not really a healthy habit. It's not welcoming. It's not getting people into the hobby. The light games are important for several reasons. One, they're a good way to get new people in. 2, they're a good way to innovate. It's hard to really do major innovation in complex games because you're already teaching so many rules to get to the game, and just to completely introduce an entirely new concept that hasn't been seen in other games, it's generally not going to work. Whereas light games, that new concept can be the whole game. Take Dominion, for example. Dominion it's not really the first deck builder, but it's generally accredited as that because it introduced the concept. If you had taken a deck builder and the first real deck builder out there was this super complex game, it would not have been so successful because it would have taken too long to learn something that's completely new. And the reason reason why complex games work is because games are iterative. You already know these concepts. So when you read through the rule books, you're just looking for what's the little twist. So you're already kind of skimming through the sections of, this is deck building. This is card drafting. I know this concept. How are they twisting it up? That's hard for new gamers, and that's why we need the light games.
Well, I think there's two things that are going to agree with you and show equivocally that's true. If you look at like the highest selling games, period, like the ones that just crush everything else, they aren't Dune Imperium. They aren't Twilight Imperium. They are Uno. They are Cards Against the Humanities. All these really super, super easy, apples to apples. All these really super easy games is what people will purchase and play more often. And then you can see where they value the more complex games is you just simply look at BGG, where they rank the greatest games in the world. They're all super complex and all have super low sales comparatively. Mm-hmm. There's weird things on there that aren't complex that do have really good sales, like The Crew. The Crew is sold everywhere. It has great sales. They sold so much of it. I wouldn't be surprised if you told me they sold 1 million copies. That's weird for being on BGG's top 100 even. The other weird anomaly, which I just had to bring up because I was looking for simple games on the list, was Crokinole. Why is Crokinole on the... Sure, yes. It's a fine game. It's a great game. But why is it even on this list? Like, they don't even do dexterity games like in the top, 1,000 normally. I think Ice Cool was one of the only exceptions, and it wasn't that high. I really think that that's only high up on this list because of, recent reviewers, some of the high-profile reviewers showing it off. But Crokinole is a great game. It's a fun dexterity game, and it's Canadian, so it's has 2 wins. But I still don't think it deserves to be on the top 100 list.
Crokinole, I think, kind of benefits from being expensive in that if you're going to chill out to get a Crokinole board, spend several hundreds of dollars on this game, you're going to want to talk about it. You're going to want to get it as much as you can.
That's another example.
Oh,
almost
absolutely.
No one has a Crokinole board. Very few people. So very
I do.
Few people. Yeah, but I mean, go poll your neighbors and your friends. How many of them have it?
Oh, that is true.
But how many people have a copy of Monopoly or a copy of Go Fish or a copy of Clue? They probably have all those in their closet. They don't have Crokinole.
Talking about those games too, I mean, you're talking about games that have been in production and around since the 60s and before. So we're in a golden age of board gaming, and I think growing up, everyone's played Clue and Monopoly and Life and Uno and all that stuff. So it's everything that everyone's ever grown up with. So complexity level in any of those games isn't even looked at. It's just what you played and what you know. Now that more and more games are coming out, people are referencing them through places like BGG. I think that's somewhat where the weighting system in there kind of fails, because people just get scared as soon as they see something that has more than a 2 when they're trying to get into games.
Yeah, and I'll agree. I think the games that really sell are going to be in your big box stores, or at least sold on your big platforms. And if you go into Target or Walmart, especially Target is the best out of the bunch, and you'll notice that they have some really hobby board games in there. But
Borders Bookstores is getting really good too.
Borders Bookstores is really good. I saw amazing games in there. My point was just that even with that, super simple games just sell. That's why you have all these ridiculous games like Don't Step on the Poop. Really?
2 points that I want to sort of reiterate from what you guys have been chatting about here. One, since BGG came up, I will take the moment to go on record and say that BGG's weight rating basically is terrible. A lot of people use BGG's weight rating and apply a value based on what they think the game's weight is. And as we have already established, weight can be subjective. Why is Monopoly super easy to play and is accessible to everyone? Because nobody reads the rules. Everyone already knows the rules to Monopoly, right? There's no barrier to entry to Monopoly because you've been taught it before you come to the table almost.
Well, I have to slightly disagree in that everybody knows what they think are the rules to Monopoly.
I mean, I won't argue that point. No. As I was saying before, there's 2 ways to think about complexity. One is depth of strategy and one is complexity of the rules. And I think people use both of these as a basis for determining what they rate games as, in addition to their own personal experiences.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And the weight system on on BGG, just like the ranking system on BGG, or just a rating system in general on BGG, makes no sense whatsoever. Here's an example. I think we were talking about earlier before the podcast. Gloomhaven. They have it rated as a 3.87 out of 5. That means it's pretty much like a medium heavy to super heavy. What does that mean? Like, I can teach Gloomhaven to a person in 10 minutes. I don't even think it's like, I think it's medium to medium light.
You guys can slide over on your soapbox here. So the game that I mentioned before, King of Tokyo, if you look at the BGG weighting, so the weighting for it is really low. It's like 1.49. And like I mentioned, it is basically Yahtzee with a theme. You can teach that game in 5 minutes, like you said, James, and everyone's having fun with it. But if you go into the weighting system for it and you look at how people have rated it, because that's how BGG does it, based off reviews, 12 people have put it at heavy. 17 people put it at medium heavy. If you were going to use a weighting system, you almost can't leave it to the open polls for the trolls to come in and do that to the games. Even though overall the averages should bring it back down, like it's just not, it's not a good system to use.
No, and I'd almost say that some of those people may not even be trolls. They'd like really think it's a heavy game.
I mean, there is some complexity in like the special ability cards and their interactions that will throw people for loops if they've never seen that sort of thing before.
Yeah, especially if they came from playing like super simple card games and jump into
But a
that.
4 or 5 though?
To them, going from like Uno to King of Tokyo would be like the most complex game they've ever played. So they'd be like, yeah, that's a 5.
Now, on the complete opposite of that, and this is just to drive my point on how trolls are ruining the rating system. So if you go to one of the longest games to play, the campaign for North Africa.
How do I know that was the game you're going to talk about?
It's 8 to 10 people, and it's going to take approximately 50 days of game time to play it. Not in-board game time, actual world time. It's rated 4.71, but if you go into the rating system, 7 people put it as a 1 for a light game.
Okay, yeah, that's a troll.
Even Twilight Imperium 4th edition, which I don't agree with the weight of 4.25 for it. It is a pretty heavy game, but 2 people voted it as a 1.
Part of the problem is there is trolls. There's a certain amount of that, but there's also the idea of you have a few different types of gamers involved in this. So you have, and it's all relative. So you got the people who typically play games like Advanced Squad Leader, and they're rating relative to that. They may consider, Advanced Squad Leader the standard for difficulty. And then is it more or less complicated than that, whether it goes above a 3 or below a 3? Whereas you have other people that their baseline is Monopoly. Is it more or less difficult than Monopoly? And that's how they rate it.
Right. You bring up a really big point where complexity is subjective. And if you want to be objective, you actually have to have solid data points to go off of and examples. And you can't have just anyone willy-nilly setting it. You'd actually have to have someone literally play each of the things that are in the different data points and then do a comparison against the game they're playing. And even that would be slightly subjective, but it'd be closer to being objective. But if you guys were going to set up reference points, what would your reference points be? Starting with what you think is going to be the lightest game or light game examples, and what you think is a medium game, and what do you think is a complex game?
I think the lightest that I can think of would be No Thanks, which is simply a game where there's a numbered card on the table. You have some little chips or a little disc that you can put on that card to say, I don't want that card. And you keep everybody goes around and keeps putting the little chips on that card until somebody decides there's enough chips on that card. I'm going to take that card, take the negative points the card's worth, get the positive for the chips. And you just keep doing that. And hopefully you can make sets because sets cancel each other out. But that's really the entire game.
And it just so happens that No Thanks is very close to a 1, at least on BGG. Though I do see 2 people that rated it a 5.
I could
you can't have open polls.
No. I could probably teach No Thanks rules without like stopping to take a breath that short. But so you get a super easy game, then you would find a medium game, and then you'd find a heavy game. Then how do you quantify that data? How are you going to explain like this is how it is a 1? Like, yeah, it's super easy to teach and stuff, but then how do you do the medium and heavy? And then what happens if a heavier game comes out than the one that you set as your example for your max?
I think a more useful complexity rating, rather than just rating it a number, list the teach time, this average teach time. Yes, that's also going to be a very variable number, but that is a number that if you have consistent kind of group of people rating these games, you should hopefully have a more consistent number than the current rating system.
I mean, publishers lie about playtimes. Let's not mince words about that. If you wanted a purely objective way to rate complexity of rules, you could just go, oh, how many pages are in the rule book? Granted, not every rule book is on a normal sheet of paper, so maybe it would have to be a word count.
Yeah, because I would say I did play Obscure War, and I went through it, and the rule book itself I think is like 30 pages, but it's like mainly pictures. It's a really good rule book, and the font is like gigantic, so like you could probably condense all the rules down to a page in normal type. So yeah.
And that's the problem that a lot of like my miniature games that I play all the time, they have, because you can pick up, I have a large collection of rule books down there that are 120 pages, 200 pages. Once you break it down, you remove army types and this and that and all the extra fluff that's in there. You remove the pictures, you got 20 pages of rules and you're done. So almost going by rule page count is kind of hard because it all depends on the extra stuff that the manufacturer wants to put in. A good example, that's the one that I did for review, the What a Tanker. That's, I think it's like 98 pages, but I can teach that game in 10 minutes.
I mean, yeah, we can't use page count or word count as a measure of how heavy a game is, because there are some games that have evolved over time, like Magic the Gathering, for example. That rule book is constantly expanded with every single expansion that comes out of Wizards of the Coast, and the game isn't that much more complicated than it was like a year ago or 2 years ago, because 90% of the rules in the book you don't use in regular play because they're just affect like a specific mechanic that only showed up in one set from like 2 years ago that doesn't really see in a lot of play.
Yeah, I think Magic only gets like a 2 point something on BGG too,
which is one of the weird games. Magic the Gathering is actually by many colleges considered the most complex game on earth. So, and that's
due to the size of the rulebook. Yeah.
Well, no, it's not only that. It's a multi-tiered thing. So it's due to the size of the rulebook, but it's also due to the variety of cards that are in the pool that's available for you to play. So it's not like a normal board game or a normal card game where you have a fixed count of cards in the game that you play with, and those are the cards you play with. In Magic the Gathering, you can construct your own deck out of a giant pool of cards. And anytime you do that, with each card being different, the complexity just skyrockets through the roof. So if someone was going to make like a computer program that could competitively play Magic the Gathering, it would be incredibly complex.
We would have solved the Turing problem. We would have a conscious machine if it could play Magic the Gathering.
Right. So
I stand corrected. It's a 3.22.
But on the flip side, if you bought a pre-constructed Magic decks, like they make dual decks, if you bought one of those, you could teach the rules to Magic in not very long, 15-20 minutes. And those people could effectively play Magic the Gathering. Not very well, but they could play it.
Hey, look at that. 97 people, just under 5% of the voters rated Magic the Gathering light 1. 10% of the people voting rated it 5 heavy. FYI.
Magic is kind of a unique case in that it's kind of made itself a little bit of modular, where you can take all of it at once if you wanted, or you can just take parts of it, which is kind of what James was saying with the campaign decks. And, it can be a relatively simple game, or it could be the most complex game you've ever played.
I think that everyone, if you go on there, you should be good at least hopefully subjectively thinking about it and not rating them because like someone rated it a 5 and it made you mad, so you rated a 1 to balance it out, or someone gave the game a rating of 10 and you're like, that's dumb, and you give it a 1 just to balance it out. You should just take what you think it actually is.
Well, in a game like Magic the Gathering, or a bunch of, like if you go into like Monopoly or Life or something like that, even if you get 10, 15 trolls, it's not going to change the score that much just because of the amount of votes that are in there. It's just much like if anybody that has taken enough college courses, once you get your GPA set after your first like 3 semesters, what you really do after that point, it's not going to change the score that much.
I also suspect the algorithm in BGG probably throws out outliers. It looks at the average and just throws out the outliers.
But yeah, Monopoly is a little weird. I think I don't know. It's one of those things that it's like super hated game. Is it a good game? I don't think so. Is it one of the most successful games on the planet? Yes. Is it a game that every box store wants to sell? Yes. Well, if they had to choose between any game on BGG's Top 100 or Monopoly, they would pick Monopoly to sell. But I don't think it's a good game.
I mean, if those people would just listen to this podcast more often,
the
problem would be solved.
Yeah, they would find new games that are good that they could play. They don't need to play this garbage that's 60 years old. They can play some more modern games.
Well, getting back on topic, I want to throw another wrinkle into the subject.
Oh, please do.
And we're going to go back to Gloomhaven for this. And the idea that, James says he can teach it pretty quickly, which you can, but that's because Gloomhaven has two different complexities. It has the person who's actually running the game has to learn a lot more rules than everybody else, because he has to, manage the enemies and, kind of run the game. Whereas the game he teaches to everybody else doesn't have to involve any of that and can be very simple.
Well, I would say, yeah, that's true. But even with that, because, I mean, if you did it that way, then it's actually like a 2. But I think that it's closer to the 3, but not like 3. It's not close. It's like 3, but not all the way close to a 4, because the majority of the rule book is just actually just reference stuff.
I think Nathan hit on something here that's actually quite relevant. I think the game itself sort of transmits to us how heavy we should expect it to be. If I have a game box and it's got cartoon animals on it, I'm automatically going to think that game's pretty light compared to, I don't know, a stern-looking man in a World War II uniform, for example.
The problem is that I've reviewed a lot of games. I'm like, this should be like amazing. I'm like super excited to read the rule book, and everything in there is like, you roll a die and whoever has the highest number wins combat. I'm like, what? Or I read this one with little cartoon rabbits on the front, and it ends up to be like a super complex, abstract area control game.
And I think that if a game doesn't deliver our expectations, then it might even get a pass in some people's minds. Like if it's got cartoon animals on it, but it's more complicated than a kid's game, it's probably going to get a lower score than if it had like a different artistic design.
Yeah, or higher than it deserves. So like if I'm playing Bunny Kingdom and I'm expecting to be like, you know what, there's bunnies on the outside, it's going to be super easy to teach, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the most complex strategy game I've ever played. It's really not, but I'm going to give it a 5 because I thought I was going to be playing with little bunnies on a map and we're just going to do little things, sort of thing. Or I get this game that has the really stern World War II guy face on there, and it ends up where I'm just like playing Yahtzee, a little bit more complex than Yahtzee. I'm going to give it a super low rating, even though it might deserve to be slightly up higher.
Yeah, and the rule book is very important for kind of setting that expectation, and it often fails to properly set it. There's been a lot of rule books I've looked at, it's 20, 30 pages, and it looks like a complex game, and I look through it. If it's not well written, sometimes I'll be confused, and then it ends up but I watch a video or eventually figure out how to play it and find out, oh, this is a simple game. I could have taught this in 5 minutes. So how well that rule book is laid out can give a false sense of complexity or just like set a positive or negative expectation on that.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with your thought there, but I think the expectation starts before you crack the rulebook. I think it starts as soon as you see the cover.
True.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. I think like it works for me all the time. When I see the cover, I have a general thought in my head on how complex the game is going to be. And a lot of times, if I'm disappointed or confused, it has to do with like the disparity between that and the actual game. I wanted to bring up something that has a lot to do with complexity in board games, but in an odd way. And it has to do with an Odyssey Chevacek and Portal games. And one of the games that is like actually very easy to teach, like it's not complicated, but I had to read the rule book like 40 frickin' times to be able to figure it out. And that was Robinson Crusoe. What the heck? That rule book is not the worst rule book, because he wrote a different rule book for another game that had to do with going to Mars, which was completely unreadable. But Robinson Crusoe is pretty close. The only way that I figured out that game, Robinson Crusoe, is I gave up reading the rule book over and over again, and I watch it play it. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Why didn't they put the rules in order?
Yeah. And they rewrote the rules to be
And it was still bad.
easier, still
Oh my gosh. And then that was a Mission Red Planet, or not Mission Red Planet. What was the Mars one again?
Same name as that movie.
First Martian. Martian? Well, I liked Robinson Crusoe. I did not like First Martian, the game. It was super boring.
I think that's a unanimous opinion on pretty much every reviewer ever to touch the game.
Yeah, and the rule book is, I think part of the problem is the rule book for that one is completely incomprehensible. Like, you cannot figure the game out from the rule book. You can easily look up reviews for that where people are like, even like shut up and sit downs, like we had to check the internet and we still didn't know how to play this game.
And it came with an app?
It came with an app that didn't work.
It made it worse.
Yeah, it would do like stuff like clear the board, and then it'd be like, okay, I hope you didn't clear the board. I'm like, oh my gosh. And there's like a bazillion pieces. And you're like, I didn't even take a picture. I give up.
This is a game that actually won awards for having the worst rule books ever written.
Yeah, I've never read a rule book worse than it. I've read rule books that were poorly translated into English, and I could understand them.
Side note, 3.79.
For Robinson Crusoe or the other one?
Yep, Robinson Crusoe, 3.79.
Yeah, I don't think the game itself is actually that heavy, but the rule book really just makes it obnoxious.
I've had rule books that I've Google translated to learn the rules, and it was easier than this game.
So, I don't know how that like really improved our conversation. I just had to throw that out there, just like a chip on my shoulder every time we talk about complexity.
That's okay. Are you feeling like you've shed the extra weight there? Gotten the load off your chest?
Yeah, I'm ready to relax now. Sit back. All the stress has been relieved. Now I'm angry again. I'm thinking about it again. I'm angry. All right, so on this episode, we did a lot talking about BGG. So for the three of you, I'm going to play a super simple game where all you need to do is guess what game I'm talking about. And to do that, I'm going to go on BGG and look up the 1 ratings for the game.
First Martian.
I'm sorry, games rated at a 1 or...
No, these are BGG games that are in the top 100. And I'm looking at the 1 reviews for them. I'm going to read off the 1 review, so what they said about the game and why it's horrible, and see if you can guess what game it is.
All right, seems fun.
Yeah. First person to 3 games wins, or when I get tired. One of the two. All right. Now, we're going to go in turn order, and I will randomly do Evan, Nathan, and then Dan. Okay, so once someone has guessed a game correctly, the next person in that order is the first person that's allowed to guess. Does that make sense?
Are you going to give us multiple choice, or are we
No, there's no
blind?
multiple choice. I'm literally going to read off the review, and I'm going to let you guys try to guess. If you can't guess it, I'll probably do 1 or 2 more, and then I'll tell you the name of the game if no one can figure it out.
If we get it wrong, it goes down the line?
Yeah, so I'll ask Evan first, do you know the name of the game? He doesn't. Nathan, then you. No one guesses it. I'll read off another review. I'll probably do max 3 reviews. And then if no one gets it, I'll tell you the name of the game and we'll do the next one. So this first game is rated a 1. So this is the first 1 rating for this game. The person states, the game simply lacks replayability. If you do the math, you will find that you only need to get 2 to 3 good cards to win the game. And you're dealt 10 random cards at the beginning of the game. And this is the only random factor in the game. Further, the game board is, with its fixed layout, basically sets you optimal strategy for you. There is no multiple ways to win. After you know how to play this game, you can never be defeated. And I want to be entertained and not challenged all the time. Last but not least, the components are awful. Evan, do you know the name of the game?
Terraforming Mars?
Actually, yes. Yes.
Oh,
So that is 1 for Evan. What's that?
I was going to guess that.
All right. So that
wow,
means
that person's...
he hates the game.
Yeah.
How could you win with only 2 cards?
Yeah.
How can you only think there's only one way to win?
I don't know. That's like the beauty of these 1 ratings. All right. I think Nathan can guess this one. All right. So the first rating is, it weighs less, but that's it. It sucks. So what do you think that
Ares
game is?
Expedition?
Nope. Dan?
Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion.
Yes, Dan.
That was my second can guess.
Dan got it. Okay, so that means Evan gets to guess first. All right. Only for scoring maximinalists. I don't know if that's actually a word, but they're using it, so sure. Cryptic scoring. No way to gauge your progress against the other players. Strategies are impossible to counter. What do you think that game is, Evan?
I'm going to guess Dune Imperium.
No. Nathan?
Blood Rage?
Nope.
I'm going to guess that this is actually Concordia.
It is! Oh my gosh, Dan, you're on fire. And I do have to read this other one off, just because it's really stupid. And this guy rated it a 1. I came here because all the people rating mature-themed games like Kingdom Death Monster or Hate with a 1, just because of their mature theme. So this game needs to be rated a 1.
Actually heard that quote before.
What? What? That doesn't even make sense.
No, it doesn't.
All right. So Dan has 2 and Evan has 1. Evan gets to be the first person to guess this. Nathan, you got to catch up. Okay.
Yeah.
So this game is rated a 1 by this guy. He says, this has as much interactivity as playing separate games of solitaire side by side with your friends. Only solitaire is much, much better because I can actually carry on a conversation while I play solitaire. Whereas when I play this game, you just sit and solve optimizing puzzles for 3 hours and I can't focus on partners at all. We have all just read books in total silence. For all the social interactivity we just had. 7 of 10 games you want to play alone. This is a negative 999 out of 10. If you want to play with friends, if this strategy is not impacted by play of others, if in fact you have no awareness of what other people are playing or even care about them, this is the greatest game for you.
Wow, strong opinion.
That was a very long one. I picked a very long one, unfortunately.
I'm going to guess Azul.
Nope, Nathan. I don't know that anyone's going to get this one.
This is completely wrong, but Seven Wonders?
Nope. How dare you? How dare you?
I mean, if we're going to talk multiplayer solitaire, we might as well talk, Race for the Galaxy.
Nope, but a good guess. But no. All right, let's see if this one helps a little bit. So Evan will still be the first one to guess. Not very special. Everybody is just doing their own thing on their own tableau, which I do not care about. Lots of downtime. The theme is also not interesting at all. Cards, too much randomness, and all this makes is one of the most horrible games ever created. There's one key word in there that can help out, but I don't know if it's enough yet.
Patchwork.
Nope. Nathan?
Castles of Burgundy?
Nope. Dan?
Gates of Loyang was my guess.
No. This one is the last one, and if you don't get it, I'll tell you, because you should get it now. Stonemaier Games published another unbalanced game. One action is stronger than any other actions, and one card strengthens the action 95% of the time more than any other. This game makes no sense. Evan?
Power Grid.
No, that's mean. No, that's mean. All right, Nathan?
I should know this. I'm trying to go through my Stonemaier list in my head. No cards in that. I don't know. Euphoria? Probably not.
Nope. Dan?
Yeah, a tableau builder from Stonemaier Games.
Oh, I might know it.
Yeah, I can't think of a tableau builder from Stonemaier.
It's Wingspan.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
But this one's awesome, so I'll read this one just because this is a 1 rating. Unfortunately, I cannot enjoy this game because the box art is problematic. It vaguely indicates a bird's... I'm not going to say that word. I don't understand why the designers felt the need to sexualize the bird cover art. What the heck is wrong with these people? Like, what? All right, so we're still at Evan. Dan has 2, Evan has 1, and we have 3 games left. So this is one of the last 3.
So far, most of these reviews had nothing to do with the game, so...
He's got to pick the good ones. I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, we get what he's doing. It's just hard because it's like these guys are crazy.
Okay, so I don't think anyone's going to get this, but we're going to go with it for the first one. Hard to believe how this is anything but the worst to anyone else. Like, really bad English. Play with toys for no apparent reason. Yay. Look at my 1 rating description again. Awful. Defies game description. Stupid drafting game. Yup. I feel sorry for the people that have given it a 100% rating. Any idea, Evan?
Good lord.
I'm going to give you one more, actually.
I might actually know it.
Okay. Go ahead. Try to give it a guess, 7.
Is this Blood Rage?
Oh, well, Nathan got it. So that's Nathan's the first one. How did you even get that from there?
I don't know, the minis and drafting. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So Dan will be the first to guess. And this one is Omega Boring. If you have been banned from a casino for counting cards, you maybe like to play this game. Any idea, Dan?
No, I got nothing on that. No.
Evan?
Is this Seven Wonders?
No, quit. Will you guys quit it with Seven Wonders? It's not on the list. It's a perfect game. Nathan?
Don't tell me this is The Crew.
It's what it is.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, you're tied with Dan. This one's even better. So I'll read one more before we go to the other one. I was going to do this one next. How can anyone like this? If you do, then what is wrong with you? Just play Fox in the Forest, okay? This sucks. I did play a few games and different people too. No matter who I was with, I agreed the game was awful. These are very opinionated people.
I've never met anybody who didn't like this game. How are they finding all these people that don't? It's called They Hate It So Much They Make Everybody Else Around Them Hate It.
I guess, yeah, something in that area. All right, here we go. This one's going to be great. So Nathan guessed the last one, so Dan starts. Is that how it goes?
Sure.
Why play this when there is Risk 2210 out there that does exactly the same thing with half the complexity? Dan?
Are we talking about Risk Legacy?
Nope.
Twilight Imperium?
Yes, you're all tied with 2. All right, we're going to have one last one, and I got it. Yeah, so Nathan starts with this. Broken game. If you rush to fill your first row, you mathematically win.
Azul?
In this completely unfair contest, Nathan wins.
Well, before we go, I have one for you.
Okay.
One rating. My rating is influenced by how bad I am at Scrabble, and this game amplifies that.
How bad I'm at Scrabble? If it's Seven Wonder, I swear to God, it's not Seven.
Nope, not Seven Wonder. This is actually not a very high rank game.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I pulled it up, this is Upwards. You never would have got this.
Oh.
And this is your rating of it.
Oh, yeah. Upwards. That's a long time ago I rated that game. I hate that game. I hate that game. That's funny. Oh my gosh. The Kingdom Death Monster guy's on here too. I came because all the people rating mature themed games like Kingdom Death Monster hate a 1. So this game is a 1 too.
Ugh.
All right. Well, thanks for the nonsense. That was entertaining. I thought I would do a little bit better. I started out strong, but kind of filtered there at the end.
Oh, you did some amazing ones. I'm not surprised no one got the Wingspan one. There was like a couple clues in there, but not a whole lot. And I'm really surprised, what was it, the one that Nathan got like in 2 seconds that only had one thing in it? That was like a
Blood Rage?
Blood Rage.
Yeah, why?
Actually, Wingspan, I had in the back of my head the entire time. I just didn't think it was right.
Yeah, I can see that.
None of these, that's the biggest thing, is like, none of them sound like they belong to the games they're talking about.
Well, hopefully that was fun for you guys. And to all the listeners out there, thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening. If you have any feedback for us, feel free to visit us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Board Game Geek Guild 2989, or our website at tabletopgamingguild.com. Don't forget to like, follow, and or subscribe. Tabletop Gaming Guild is a product of Tabletop Gaming Guild LLC. All rights reserved.